Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/Animal Stories for Kids. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was an antlion named Hal. Hal the antlion lived in a small, dusty corner of a quiet forest. He was tiny, with sharp pincers, with a stubby, curved body that helped him dig deep into the soft sand. Hal was a trap builder, and he was very good at it. Each day, he would dig his funnel-shaped pit in the sand, just waiting for ants to fall in so he can have a meal. But there was one thing about Hal that made his life difficult. He had a quick temper. He got upset and angry really fast. When things didn't go as planned, Hal the antlion would get frustrated very easily. If an ant didn't fall into his trap the way he wanted, or if a gust of wind messed up his carefully dug pit, Hal would get so angry that he'd start throwing sand around, which made his trap even worse. Hal wasn't a bad antlion. He had a good heart and wanted to do things right. But for some reason, when he got upset, he'd lose control, and that would lead to more problems. One bright morning, Hal the antlion was working hard, digging his trap as perfectly as he could. He wanted to catch a big ant, one that would fill his belly. He was making good progress, and he was enjoying his time, carefully crafting the perfect trap that not only was looking great, but was turning out to be one of his best yet. "This is looking like a great trap," Hal said to himself, happily as he was kicking and flinging sand. As he worked, he heard the soft rustling of ants nearby. He hurried to finish his pit, making the walls steep and slippery so the ants couldn't escape once they fell in. Just as he was putting the final touches on his trap, he dug the pit a little too wide that a small pebble rolled down the side of the pit, ruining his hard work. Hal's temper flared, and he got so upset. "Why does this always happen to me?" he shouted, flinging sand everywhere. As he was flinging sand all over the place in his anger, it was messing up his trap, and he even got so mad that his tiny body trembled with frustration, and he accidentally collapsed the whole side of his trap, making his trap unusable. And what's worse, he spent a lot of time on it, and now it was all wasted, just because he couldn't control his temper. From a nearby patch of grass, a group of ants were watching. They noticed all the flying sand from Hal throwing a fit, and so they were able to carefully avoid Hal the antlion's trap. They whispered to each other about how easily he got angered and how that made his traps weaker. "That Hal, he's always so mad," one ant said.
"Yeah, it's easy to avoid his traps when he's angry,"
another added.
"He doesn't pay attention, and then he messes up his own work."
Hal the antlion could hear them, and it made him even more upset. He tried to rebuild his trap, but his legs shook with frustration, making it harder to dig smoothly. As he dug with his shaking legs, he couldn't control where he was flinging the sand, and it just was a big mess. Nearby, other creatures watched as well. A little ground beetle scurried by, shaking its head. "You'll never catch anything if you keep getting angry like that," it said.
"I don't care,"
Hal the antlion snapped, throwing more sand around.
"I'm doing my best, but nothing is working."
The beetle paused for a moment and said, "Sometimes it's better to slow down, stop, and slowly count to 10, and try to calm yourself by thinking before you act. You don't want to ruin things just because you're upset. Hal ignored the beetle's advice and kept working while he was mad. But now, his trap was a mess. The sides weren't steep enough again, and the ants could easily crawl out of it if they fell in. By the end of the day, Hal hadn't caught anything. He was tired, hungry, and still upset. As the sun set, Hal the antlion curled up near his pit, feeling frustrated and sad. He didn't understand why he couldn't control his temper. It always seemed to ruin everything. The next morning, Hal tried again. He felt better from the sleep, and he happily started to dig a new trap. This time, taking extra care with each scoop of sand. But halfway through, a gust of wind blew, sending grains of sand tumbling into his pit. Hal clenched his pincers and felt the familiar heat of anger rising inside of him. He was about to throw sand in every direction again when he remembered what the beetle had said the day before.
Slow down, stop, and slowly count to 10. And think about your actions,
Hal the antlion said to himself quietly. So, he stopped digging for a moment, and he waited a few seconds. He stopped what he was doing, and he started to count slowly.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
His body stopped shaking, and the anger inside him started to go away, and he thought about his actions. After a few moments, he looked around. The pit was still a little messy, but it wasn't ruined. He could still fix it. Hal carefully pushed the sand back into place, gently making the sides of his trap steep again. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. Not long after, an ant wandered by, unaware of the trap, and it tumbled down the steep sides trying to escape. Hal the antlion waited, still feeling a little nervous, but instead of panicking, he stayed calm. He slowly flicked sand at the ant. Soon enough, the ant was stuck at the bottom of the pit, and Hal was able to catch his meal. For the first time in a long while, Hal the antlion didn't feel frustrated. He felt proud. He had controlled his anger and was able to do what he needed to do. As the days passed, Hal started to change. Every time something went wrong, he reminded himself to slow down, stop, count to 10, and think about his actions. Eventually, he built better traps, caught more food, and felt happier. The other animals noticed too. One day, as Hal the antlion was digging another trap, the same ground beetle from before scurried by, and it paused to watch him work. "Hey, you seem a lot more calm these days," it said with a smile. Hal nodded, feeling a little embarrassed.
Yeah, I've learned to take my time and not get so angry so fast. It's hard, but it's helping.
The beetle gave him a nod of approval and said, "That's good to hear. Anger only makes things worse, and it makes you feel not so very good inside. But if you can control your anger, it'll help with whatever is happening. And most of all, it'll help you feel much better." From that day on, Hal the antlion was known as the calmest antlion in the forest. He still built traps and ate ants, but he did it with patience and care. And while things didn't always go the way he wanted it to go, he didn't get upset anymore. Hal had learned that staying calm made everything better, not just for his hunting, but also his happiness. And whenever a breeze knocked sand into his pit or a pebble rolled down the side of his trap, Hal would simply slow down, stop, count to 10, think about his actions, and start again. And the antlion lived happily ever after. The end. The antlion belongs to the family of around 2,000 species of insects and are named for their predatory nature as a larva, which traps ants and other small insects in pits dug in the ground. Antlions are found throughout the world, usually in dry, sandy areas. Antlion babies are called larvae, and they don't look like their grown-up selves. As adults, they look more like small dragonflies and are actually in the Neuropteran family Myrmeleontidae. The Myrmeleontidae family is the most well-known family of Neuroptera, and they're named after the larva in the genus Myrmeleon. The name Myrmeleon is a Greek word that means antlion. Adults are known sometimes as antlion lacewings, and they mostly fly around at dusk or just after dark and can be mistaken for little dragonflies or damselflies. They're called antlions because they eat ants by catching them in traps that they dig in the sand. Antlions like to live in sandy, dusty places like deserts, forests, or under rocks and trees. They need soft soil to make their traps. You can find them all over the world. Antlions dig tiny pits to trap ants. These pits are funnel-shaped, and when an ant falls in, the antlion grabs it with its strong jaws. After eating, they throw out the ant's leftover parts. They only eat what they need and toss the rest away. Antlions are usually very patient, and they can wait for days for an ant to fall into their pit. Antlions are small, about 1 inch long, when they're a larva, and as adults, they stop catching ants and they drink nectar instead. Antlions start as eggs, and once they hatch, they become larvae, which is when they dig pits and catch ants. After eating a lot, they spin up a cocoon using silk and sand, where they turn into adult antlions. As adults, they fly around to mate, lay eggs, and the whole life cycle starts again. Antlions have to watch out for predators like birds, lizards, and larger insects that might eat them. Antlions help the ecosystem by keeping the number of ants in check. The antlion is sometimes called a doodlebug and leave kind of a scribble or doodle trails in the sand as they go. There are folklores that say that if you lean over an antlion or a doodlebug pit and say to it, "Doodlebug, doodlebug, come out of your house," the doodlebug or antlion will kick up sand and move out of the way. This is most likely because the antlion responds to vibrations, and the voice from a human can cause some vibrations and make them move. Antlions dig pits that are about 2 inches deep and about 3 inches wide at the edges. These antlion larvae crawl backwards when they make their traps, using its abdomen to dig up the soil and fling it with its legs. And they keep digging this way in a circle as it digs downward in a funnel shape, creating a pit that has loose sand on it and gets deeper and deeper. And when the pit is completed, the antlion larva settles in the bottom and buries itself in the soil. When an ant comes into the pit, the sand is so loose that it becomes so slippery that the ant can't get out. And once the antlion larva detects that an ant is in its trap, it starts flinging sand, making it even harder for the ant to climb out. Antlion larvae are able to eat more than just ants. They eat other insects and can even eat small spiders. Antlions can also play dead when there's a predator around. The antlion larvae have a plump abdomen with a thorax that has 3 pairs of walking legs. It has a flat head that has pincer-shaped jaws that are sharp. The antlion has also been an inspiration for all sorts of stories throughout history. Sometimes you could find antlion pits by looking for cone-shaped holes in loose sand or soil. Have you seen a real-life antlion before? If you have, where did you see it? If you want to write to us, ask your parent to email us at animalstoriesforkids@gmail.com and tell us what you think of our stories. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/animalstoriesforkids. Until next time, bye!